Welcome to this tutorial making biochemical renders. In this example we will make an ATP synthase render using PDB files. First we will download these from the digital library, the protein database bank. Then use VMD to convert these files to .obj objects which Blender can actually understand and use. And then I'll show you how I did the coloring, the lighting, the membrane with particle system and the basic rendering setup. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is download the correct files. So we're going to go to the protein data bank, and there you can find most protein structures. But we're going to look for ATP synthase, and a very specific one is going to be this one. I used this in my first render. We're going to use this. So you're going to download the PDB file and save that somewhere where you can find it. And then we're going to open up VMD. You can download that, and I will send a link in the description where you can find the correct software. So here we're going to open up a new molecule. Here you are going to find your PDB file. You're going to load that, and here we can view what that's going to look like. But if you export it like this, Blender won't understand, so we'll need to change the graphical representation. You can try multiple things. I think cartoon and new cartoon are pretty cool. And surf, quick surf is the same but just quicker. I'm gonna wait and get the surf and cut. Okay, so the surf is done rendering. This will take a couple of seconds. Now we want to change the coloring method, and doing that manually in Blender is just very tedious. So we're going to change this to either index, which is here, or to chain. And for this video I'm going to choose chain. We can apply that and it will calculate again. Okay, so the file's done being rendered. So we can close this and the file browser. And then we're going to actually render it and save it as an OBJ. And wavefront is going to have colors. Another possible would be to save it as an STL. You're going to want to write OBJ here, otherwise it won't know the file format. And we're going to start rendering. An STL is also possible, but an STL won't have the color data, and we're going to use the color data in Blender. So the exporting has finished, and we can now open it up in Blender. Inside Blender, the first thing we're going to do is delete the default cube and the lighting. And then we're going to go to import, wavefront object, and then we're going to import the protein. This can take a while. So that's imported. Inside VMD you could have disabled the axes, but I forgot that, so we have to go into edit mode, go into wireframe, and delete this manually. It could be very useful if you have multiple files that you want to align, but since we only have the ATP synthase right now, we don't really need that, and deleting it will be enough. Now the first thing we're going to do is check these colors. Because it's an object, the colors have exported nicely. But this is still not really what we want, because we want these three subunits to actually be the same. The method to do this is go into edit mode, select the first red one, which will be this subunit. Then we also want the blue subunit and the gray subunit. And we'll go to the first one, call this subunit 1. You could actually give them the real names, but to be honest, I don't know. So subunit 1 is going to be fine. And like this, we're going to group them together. Alt A to deselect everything, and then we're going to find other groups. So this is the yellow one. Then we have another yellow one, which we're going to select. And we have this gray one. I'm assuming it's this one. And then we're going to, well, let's just use the last one, subunit 2, and assign them all. And you can check by change the change color and how they've actually changed. And we're going to do that for all colors. So I have merged a couple of the colors, and all the materials that we don't need we will delete. And now that we actually have an organized material section, we can start giving them actual materials. The colors they have right now are completely arbitrary and chosen by VMD. So we go into the shading panel. We immediately are in Eevee, and that's fine for now actually. So we're going to go to the first material, which is the red one, and I'm going to take my reference material, which is this image. I've made this before and I kind of want to remodel it. So this is going to be sort of a purplish, a little bit bright, no, not too bright. And the secret to making organic materials in Blender is just adding subsurface scattering. Eevee doesn't really handle this very well, but we're going to render it in cycles, and that's going to be a lot better. Then we're gonna add the membrane. The membrane was made using this mesh. You can really easily make this yourself, make an icosphere, and then extrude this, and then give a little wiggle to it to give it some randomness. Tutorials that will show you how to make this. Then we can add a plane. Then this plane needs a subdivision surface, and we're gonna put this to 6. Now it's gonna be rounded, which is not what we want. We want it to be square, but there are gonna be extra vertices in here. And then we're gonna add a particle system, a hair particle system. For now 1000 is fine. Toggle advanced. Then in render, we're gonna render as an object, and we're gonna select this object as our phospholipid. We're gonna use object rotation, and then we'll have to rotate it along the y-axis, I believe, and that's correct. Okay, cool. Then we can make this smaller, or we can increase the particles, but for now keep them low, because otherwise the viewport will be really slow. Enable rotation, randomness, and we're gonna add a face and face randomness. Scale is just gonna be the default value, and that's all we really need to change. You can add a little randomness, but I don't like it. So we're gonna move this into position and move this to the backside, which is fine for the render. Then we can add a displacement modifier, which is going to just displace the whole thing. Create a new texture, and then as a texture we're actually going to use clouds. Now this is way too much, so we're gonna increase the size. So now it's more of a waveform, and until you have something you like. I think this is gonna be, no, sure. Inside the modifier stack, we're gonna decrease the strength. If you hold down shift, you can actually move it slower. 0.2 will be great. This doesn't actually do anything yet to the particle system yet, and we have to move this up. Now it's doing something, but behind the subdivision surface, otherwise it's just for 4 vertices that it's moving. We will duplicate the ATP synthase to about here, give it some random rotation. Probably something like this. And if we need more, then we can just duplicate this. Make sure that in the particle systems, render object show emitter is off. And if that doesn't work, give the material and have that material as transparent, just to be sure that it doesn't actually ever show. Then we'll change the camera. Change the render engine to cycles. I chose a 2000 by 1500 aspect ratio. 1500 by 2000, all the way around. Move this into position. And we're gonna change the focal length to something about around, maybe a little less. Now it's well in frame. We're gonna add depth of field, and the focus object is going to be either the protein itself, or we can add a empty plane axis, and we can select the empty. Now we have a little bit more freedom. This can be crazy low, and the blaze can be 6. Let's add a 6 edge depth of field instead of a rounded depth of field effect, which is pretty cool. And now you can see the depth of field. Then you need lighting, which we will be using 2 area lights. Orange. Make it crazy bright. Let it point a little bit down. If we preview, we can see a nice rim light here and a soft light on the rest. This can be a little bit brighter, but you can check that for yourself and find out what you like most. Here you have to enable scene lights and scene world, but it doesn't handle the lights as well. Now for a background, we will switch to the world shader. We'll add a color ramp. Add the strength to 4. Make this some tint of blue. Change the bottom one to V-spline and move it all the way up. And then we're going to use a foreground texture, plug the distance into the vector, and have a scale of probably something like this. And if we preview, you can see that it's creating this cellular pattern. And you want to have some bright areas in the side the light is coming from and some darker areas on the other side. So you can either change this vector or just rotate it like this. We're going to decrease the scale. Make the strength maybe 6. You can play around with this however you like. The rotation is a little weird. Now it's normal again. You have to if you select everything, deselect the particle emitter. And we can increase this however we like. You can also apply the subdivision surface to one of the planes and remove a little, so that these actually have space. But for now I think this is fine, and this is how you create the ATP synthase. Now we will hit render, and then you will see the result. So the render is finished. It's not exactly the same as the original piece. That's due to some small changes in color and lighting, because I had to redo that manually. And it's never gonna be exactly the same unless you copy all the values. It's more to show the general workflow for any type of protein, and I really do recommend to try and play around a bit and to find a render and a render style that feels artistic and suits you. I had to try a lot of different things before I get something like this that actually seems to work. Also let me know in the comments if you want to see how I animated the version. And I think that's about it. Thank you for watching.